open digital ecosystems are essentially laying the groundwork and building such digital platforms that subsequently enable a community of actors, individuals, organizations to come together and build, these digital economies of scale that I was just talking about earlier, right? And uh, just in India alone, these are, for instance, some of the uh, open digital ecosystems which are already in the works today or are live and deployed, and chances are you're already using some of them, right?
Joining in. Welcome to the Blue Circle. It's such a big privilege and pleasure to connect with everyone and our distinguished keynote speaker, who is handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience he brings in. Thank you also to our distinguished audience for joining us, most of whom are CEOs, CXOs, senior leaders. Many of them are our members and are repeat visitors to our webinars. This is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even high levels of dialogue through the online mode as well. For those of you who are new with us today, Blue Circle is the world's first sector-specific networking app for business leaders that's built in India. We currently focus in 20 different sector communities such as e-mobility, renewable energy, BFSI, real estate, and many more. We also present socio-economic insights which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. Along with our weekly webinar series and our digital publication, you will be happy to know that we have recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app for leaders, somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to hang meaningful conversations, connect with over 15,000 plus like-minded leaders from India and across the globe, house high quality curated content, and access business opportunities across these sectors. Those leaders among you who are interested, please join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section, while soon be sending out invitations to our new guests post today's discussion. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's keynote speaker, Mr. Nikhil Kuhre, CEO of Finarkein Analytics. He looks after the product roadmap, business development, ecosystem evangelism, and is a volunteer architect with Sahamati, a self-organized collective of the Mount Aggregate ecosystem. In his role as a Sahamati volunteer, Nikhil is helping with the industry outreach, managing the Sahamati Discord community, with the technical being built for the account aggregator ecosystem. And for today's topic, I request Mr. Kuhre to please begin the session. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Kuhre.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gautam. And thank you everyone for joining in. I think, first of all, thank you, Blue Circle and Dharma, Team Dharma for sort of pulling this off. And, I will get to intros and what we do in the end, right? So let's just dive in, because, since it's a short 30-minute session, I would love to get some questions in and get right into it, right? Awesome. So economies of scale, a digital edition, right?
Nikhil, we can't see
the audience this is intended for is people who want to build. Okay.
Okay, we can see it now. We can see it now. Yeah. Now it's just.
Okay. Yeah. So screen's visible, right? Just tell me if something is.
It's visible. It's visible. Yeah.
Not working on the. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about was that you have traditional economies scale, right? And that's been something that's brought about by the the industrial revolution, and as businesses scale, they are able to leverage things like subsequently a brand is built, then the cost to actually take access to better finance and so on. That's been the traditional side of when we talk about economies of scale. And that's why we've seen conglomerates like, say, somebody like a Vedanta, or somebody like Reliance Industries scaling and building what they have built, right? But when we move over to the digital side, again, you have to look at it from a different lens, right? For example, technology is something that can work around the clock. Once you've created your initial unit or your product, then the subsequent cost to build that next unit is pretty much negligible, right? It's probably just your compute or your operations costs, right? And of course, the kind of compute capability that technology brings, not to mention say recall in terms of database and data persistence, is again a massive multiplier effect, right? And of course, with technology and such digital economies, you have access to a global market effectively, right? And lastly, again, this is something that's very fairly more unique on the digital side as opposed to say your traditional economies of scale. You have something known as network effect, right? And what I mean by network effect is, as and when a very simple definition is, as and when more people join, there is greater value in that ecosystem, in that economy, and subsequently it leads to a multiplier effect to again acquire the next set of users and truly build out economy scale kind of infrastructure, right? But all of this sounds fairly difficult to pull off. And say if you are a couple of individuals who've joined in on this call, and you want to understand how do we get started, right? So that's where we get to that, right? It's not a one-person job, right? It takes governance, it takes communities, and it takes protocols. So very quickly, let me get into that and what I mean by that. So first of all, when we talk about economy or say nation scale infrastructure, it's first of all it's not something that we can pull off on our own. You need laws and regulation to sort of step up and lay the groundwork, and that's we've seen that in action in something like India. Today all of us are probably having an Aadhaar card in our wallet or at home, and we are regularly paying on payments rails like UPI, right? So all of that came through regulation, and subsequently the second bit was through community, right? Once you have regulation in place, there were volunteers, there were individuals, and there were organizations who came together to collaboratively build out and design these ecosystems, these digital economies, right? So that's the community aspect. And lastly, India is again taking a very unique approach when it comes to such digital economies. And the idea is that we are going with a protocol first approach. What I mean by that is that an open interoperable protocol or set of rules and guidelines are essentially defined by technical specifications. And building this on your own is again a massively difficult task. But the moment you build out a blueprint and you put it out there, once you have all stakeholders aligning to that blueprint, suddenly when we talk about those economies of scale, those are feasible, right? And that's what essentially changes when you bring governance, community, and protocols together, right? And the result of that is open digital ecosystems. So what do I mean by open digital ecosystems? Open digital ecosystems are essentially laying the groundwork and building such digital platforms that subsequently enable a community of actors, individuals, organizations to come together and build these digital economies of scale that I was just talking about earlier, right? And just in India alone, these are, for instance, some of the open digital ecosystems which are already in the works today or are live and deployed, and chances are you're already using some of them, right? Let's just take a look at some of them very briefly and quickly. Obviously, I think the most popular one is probably the Aadhaar initiative, which laid the groundwork for India Stack, right? And the Aadhaar initiative was the idea: can we have an identity for all individuals? Subsequently, on that new economy or that new ODE, what was the first use case that was enabled was something like Aadhaar-based KYC, right? And subsequently, once you had Aadhaar-based KYC, the cost to say bank the unbanked through something like Jan Dhan accounts was very unit economic positive, or at least break even, as opposed to the previous way of doing, say, paper KYC, which used to cost upwards of 350 to 400 rupees per new account, right? So that's just one example. Other byproduct of India's stack that's fairly mainstream now is, of course, UPI and IMPS and the other payment rails that NPCI has brought about. Again, this is all based on open protocols, right? And now that we had strong proof of concept out there that this can go mainstream and this can bring massive economies of scale, uh, and unlocking new opportunities. Suddenly you had, or not suddenly, but over time you had government, you had community come together and build these next set of ODEs, right? And let me sort of cover some of them very quickly again. So you of course have the health. If you're aware of the Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, it was announced by our Prime Minister recently, last year, and it's been picking up for a while now. If you got your COVID vaccinations in India, the certificate and the whole QR code, it's again based on global WHO approved interoperable open standards, and that's all a part of the Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission. All our electronic health records are being digitized, and you have major chains like Apollo, you have SRL Diagnostics, Dr. Lal Path Labs. All of these guys are now participating on creating a digitized open digital ecosystem, right? On the health side, you of course have CERSE, which is the entity that manages the CKYC infrastructure registry. You have Digital Sky, which is an open API first approach for registering drones and subsequently usage of drones. You of course have Sahmati and Credol bringing the account aggregator and the open finance initiative and the lending protocol for, say, MSME and the lower middle income kind of segment, right? And then another bit that some of the people in the audience may be aware of is Diksha. Diksha is the education ODE. Again, it's you have CBSE and all major state boards who have adopted it, and Diksha is essentially again based on an open interoperable protocol to subsequently digitize edtech, right? And of course, DigiLocker by far, I think everyone's also aware of that. So what I'm trying to get at is that India is laying the groundwork for these digital economies, right? And this number and this research it's not mine. It's something that BCG and Omidyar network and people much smarter than me have built and crunched the numbers and came to these metrics. So what I'm trying to get at is that there is massive opportunity. It's a blue ocean. Very few people and early adopters are working around these ecosystems. And the good news is that the hard work is done. The hardest work is by far getting government and the regulation and the governance aspect of it going. Once you have that and you have a minimum viable sort of community coming together to lay that groundwork, subsequently it's the industry and individuals like you who can come participate and build value on top of these ecosystems, right? So let's get to that, right? How do you do that? Let's say that there's a solid base, right? But what next, right? So first of all, I think 4 things that you can do regardless of your background. You can read, right? Currently you have content that's from early adopters, and so it's not fluff pieces. It's actually fairly meaty, and you get to read some amazing stuff. Again, the early adopters who are building out these ecosystems are very driven individuals who are doing it uh, for various reasons, but yeah, absolutely motivated individuals, and you can learn tremendous amounts from that lot, right? You can join communities, like-minded communities who are building in and around these open digital ecosystems. We run one such community called o.dev. You can just enter that in a browser and go to o.dev, and you can find a link to our Discord server to sort of join there. Otherwise, also there are a bunch of other volunteer communities driven by organizations like iSpirit, Sahmati, Credol, a couple of others, right? You can, of course, volunteer with these organizations to understand how these ecosystems work and how you can build on top of them. You don't, again, I want to lay emphasis on the fact that this is not something just for a technologist, right? Somebody with an IT background. We need people who understand the domains, right? Because this is, again, a very diverse set. We are talking about health, finance, land records, drones, logistics, right? It's massive. Everyone can play a role, and the more people who participate, the greater and faster that value creation is going to happen, right? And yeah, we personally, me and my team, we follow a three sort of point principle, where the idea is that when you focus on the utility of these ODEs and create tangible use cases, what will follow is ubiquity, as in it will go mainstream, and you'll have more and more people actually using and understanding the value, and subsequently that will create more trust. And it's a flutitious sort of flywheel that once it gets going, you have utility, you have the early adopters making it more ubiquitous, who in turn lead let the next set of users who are adopting build trust in the ecosystem, and so on, right? And that's how we get to the next UPI, the next whatever, right? These ODs. So yeah, that's my pitch, and anyone who's listening in, all I want you to do is go out, read, build, and it's, like I said, it's a blue ocean. And yeah, with that, let me end on a meme that so this can truly be the future, right? A world driven by neutral open protocols, and we can get there. Very quickly, I want to cover what me and my team do. So we at Finarkein, what we do is we work as volunteers to build out these open digital ecosystems as public digital goods from the inside out. And subsequently, we've built a data analytics platform that helps businesses connect, consume, and publish data and information to and from these open digital ecosystems, right? I've added a couple of links that you can sort of read more about it. I think by far one of the best ones is How India Wins the Future from early last year, which is a great talk by Balaji. And of course, even the first article is pretty damn good. So with that, I think let's get to questions.
Thank you, Nikhil. I'll just quickly jump out of the first question, which we previously were asked. Question is from Himesh Shah. He's a partner at Sonal Ventil Fabric. He asks, if our company is a MSME and there are many other players, cutthroat competition to be exact, resulting in bare minimum margin and underutilization of current production capacity, how can we adapt economies of scale?
Yeah. So first of all, I believe in India, you can have three sort of businesses built, right? You can have a IP driven business, or you can have an execution driven business, or you can have a distribution driven business, right? So depending on the kind of product you're building, if you're seeing it's heavily crowded and it's you have a lot of competition, then I'm guessing it's not something like an IP play. It's probably more of a distribution play. So in that case, I would suggest you would need to focus on your distribution, right? Because ultimately, if the cost to or the barrier to entry in your segment is fairly low, then somebody who is able to outcompete on distribution is the person who's going to or is the business who's ultimately going to consolidate and win that sector. And sometimes, again, you need to understand that not all sectors and not all verticals are winner takes all, right? Sometimes you can have multiple winners, sometimes you can coexist, and sometimes not. So happy to dive in further offline, but that's my 2 bits on that.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the next question, which is come in our Q&A section. The question is from Akshay Sharma. He's asking, while cloud is a great way to save and retrieve data, it is not a cheap option for small businesses. What is the way forward?
Correct. So what I would say is that it is not cheap for sure. But what you need to understand is that the alternative so what is cloud? First of all, it's essentially somebody else's computer, right? And you're essentially renting compute, which is the processing power, and you're renting storage. And ultimately in the long term, it is much cheaper. But I agree that, unless if you're building things in house or something like that, technology talent is expensive. The cost barrier to get there is expensive. But again, there are economies of scale that kick in once you go online and once you're on cloud. So what I would suggest is that you should look for SaaS offerings, software as a service kind of offerings, who are solving the specific problem you have to begin with, as opposed to saying, outright, I am going to go completely digital and cloud native from day zero, right? You can, especially ones that are built in India for, and yeah, and subsequently,
Nikhil, there's some form of internet lag from your end. Can't hear you completely. Nikhil, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
We couldn't hear your part. Is it possible if you could repeat your answer? There was couldn't hear anything of it.
Okay, sure. So the question was, I think, more
Question was, yeah.
yeah, how can businesses save and retrieve data from cloud, and it's not a cheap option, right? So what's the going forward? Okay, so it's not cheap, like I said, but what I'm saying is that, you're looking at it from a lens of uh, as an entirety, right? And what I'm saying is that chop up your problems into bits and pieces, and say, like, if you want to take, say, billing online, right, billing on cloud, then you can look at something like QuickBooks or Zoho to begin with, right? If you want to take resource management or HR online, you can look at relevant HR SaaS offerings. All of these different problems that you have today are being tackled by specific vertical SaaS offerings who are specialized in that domain. And what I would suggest is that most of these guys also offer free trials, and you can start there and get your feet wet. But that being said, you ultimately you have to take a call on your business in terms of what is absolutely core, and where are the most efficiencies coming from. So some processes on cloud which are taking up, say, a lot of your resource bandwidth in terms of human resources, or are simply too costly today, like, say, it's affecting turnaround time for your business, right? So that's something that I would definitely target taking online first as opposed to later, right? So I hope the audio was clear, and
Yeah,
that
I was
answers
much
your
clear.
question.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll move on to the next one. It's come from Rakesh Malik. The question is, while DigiLocker is a great way to maintain KYC documents, how safe is the data?
Hey Rakesh, so what I can assure you is that this is the pro of having open interoperable protocols, right? It's essentially open source. It's out there for anyone to see and understand the security, the kind of security infrastructure that's built. And without getting too technical, what I can tell you is that we are using security that the major sort of organizations like FBI and all of these other crowd uses, right? You have elliptical curve cryptography standards, and basically people with PhDs and who have done the work, legwork, building the security standards. So rest assured, from a security perspective, 9 out of 10 times any leaks that are happening, it's usually human error. And so what you need to be more concerned about is, once you consent to share your data with some other entity, the moment they're getting a copy of that data, is their security guideline and usage protocol as safe and secure as that I also back of our mind. And that's the way we are building Finarkein, where it's providing something like a trusted execution environment to access data from these ODEs and subsequently use them. So yeah, work to be done, but I can assure you that the ecosystems themselves are very secure, right? I can't comment on the organizations who are subsequently using that data.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to the next question, Nikhil. Question is from a Finarkein perspective. Finarkein played a big role in building the account aggregator. How was the experience and what's the way forward?
Well, the account aggregator was a very slow burn. People who are
Nikhil, I've lost you again.
hello.
Nikhil, your internet is gone again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, just unstable office. Yeah. So the account aggregator, right? So the first paper from RBI actually came out in 2017, late 2017, right? Which outlined the hypothesis around having an open finance infrastructure, and years utility, right? So what I mean by utility, again, going back to that trust. Yeah.
Again, this
Sorry.
It's okay, you can continue. We'll probably try to get the answers written by you and
Yeah.
send.
So
Yeah.
what I'll do is that I'll also, if you have copies of these questions, just send them to me later.
We'll have it. Share with you, sir.
Yeah, write them down. But yeah, very quickly, I think the experience was I mean, now that we look back, it's pretty awesome. But along the way, it was super slow. But that's how it works, right? So on the flip side, what I'll say is that if this was built, solely by us or by any closed ecosystem player, it would never go mainstream, right? Essentially, because the moment you are lowering access barriers, what happens is that everyone then focuses on different parts of the value chain and actually focuses on the utility and the value creation aspect, as opposed to, say, building just the bridges, right? And just laying the groundwork. So by having odes like account aggregator and playing a role in building them, I think it was a fantastic learning experience for me and my team. And it gave us the confidence of subsequently venturing into these other ODs and hopefully becoming a full-fledged open data sort of company.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to the next question quickly. It's from Akshay again. He's asking, can increased digital footprint decrease NPLs? If yes, how? And there's another question asked by two gentlemen for the same question. What about data privacy in ODEs?
Understood. So let's first talk about digital footprint, right? So what I would say is that we need to move to an information collateral economy. And what I mean by that is, today we are driven by, say, something like a collateral economy, where if you want access to credit, you need to provide physical proof like property, gold, or a balance sheet showing revenues, it's very difficult to get access to credit once you move away from the 750 plus credit score, 700 plus credit score kind of individuals and businesses, right? And so that's something that can change, right? Again, with the protocol first approach for lending, which is OCE and the Open Credit Enablement Network, it's one of those odes that's starting to scale up now. So what happens with such ODEs is that once you are moving to an information collateral economy, having access to better data with, of course, the individual or the business consent, you are enabling that movement yourselves as an individual who is still looking to access. And subsequently, what I'm saying is that the good actors who previously felt that due to the current criterias and not getting access to, say, better services or better credit are now duly rewarded. And conversely, the bad actors who were getting away with it by due to the lack of action or insufficient information and with banks and NBFCs acting too little too late, that's also something that will go away once you have again an information collateral based economy. So I think it will definitely lead to improvements, and more importantly, again, when you talk about improvements, you're looking from a lens of the existing customer base. what I'm saying is that with these ODEs, you are getting new markets, new market segments which are opening up, right? And that by itself is massive. Getting access to credit for, say, the sole proprietorships, right? That kind of organizations and businesses are the ones who are going to subsequently unlock a significant chunk of that 700 billion number that you saw on that diagram, right? So, and the last, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
And the last question. So, data privacy. It's again a very it's a topic that we at Finarkein personally have spoken about trying to program for it also. So what I mean by that is we have personally looking at design choices like zero trust architecture or following privacy by design principles. More importantly, we were
Nikhil, we again lost you. Nikhil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think there's a very big lag on your end. What I can do is I'll share the questions with you post this this discussion. I'll send it to you, and if you could just write down your answers, I'll share the same with the same gentleman who have asked the question. Does that work?
Yeah, sure. Sorry guys, I think just some internet issues, but I hope everyone in the audience could hear most of it and learn something new and interesting. And yeah,
I think we've all heard quite a bit. Thank you very much, Nikhil. Such an insightful and engaging session, and a privilege to hear you. Our guests and I have been hooked on to the very end and have taken home several nuggets. And thank you to our leaders in the audience for joining us and for staying till the end and for always asking excellent questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.